There's an old truth that many men have forgotten because it appears too simple to matter. The core of a man's soul is not revealed in what he declares, but in what he cannot hide when life places pressure on him. For generations, people have tried to build complex methods to judge the character of others. They depend on words, outward appearance, achievements, or the delicate mask of social charm. Yet these are illusions, thin veils covering the depth of reality. If you want to understand what truly exists behind the image a man presents to the world, do not be impressed by his performance. Instead, pay attention to quiet signs, two living truths that do not deceive. They are so ordinary that most people overlook them. Still, these two things reveal the entire structure of a man's inner world. The first is this: how does he treat those who have nothing to give him? When a man stands before a king, he bows. When he faces someone whose favor he seeks, his smile widens and his words become sweet. These actions cost him nothing. They are tools, strategies shaped by self-interest. They do not define his character. But consider the beggar on the street, the waiter who serves him, or the subordinate who feels uneasy in his presence. These individuals act as mirrors that reflect who he truly is. When there is no reward to gain and no threat of punishment, the mask falls and the unguarded self appears. Notice how he speaks to the one who cannot respond with power, how he looks at the person who cannot advance his ambition. Does he dismiss the weak because they seem small? Or does he respect the dignity that still lives within them? In this simple exchange lies the measure of a man's humanity. I have seen men who appeared strong in virtue until they were granted authority over those they considered unimportant. Then another side surfaced, rising quietly from within. This shadow is not evil in a crude sense. It is the unrecognized truth inside them, the suppressed impulses, hidden pride, and the desire to control. When the chance arises to display superiority without consequence, the polished surface begins to crack, and the more primitive nature becomes visible. This is why the real measure of a man is not found in how he treats his equals or those above him. In those situations, he is guided by benefit and caution. His true character appears only in the presence of those who cannot reward his kindness or respond to his cruelty. This is the first sign, the first quiet admission of who he is. It is called silent because it is not spoken, it is demonstrated. You cannot simply ask a man, "Are you kind to those beneath you?" His answer may mislead even himself. Instead, observe him when he believes no one is evaluating him, because in that moment he is most exposed. The second sign is more subtle, yet it reaches deep into the core of the psyche. Notice how he reacts to loss, humiliation, or hardship. A person is never more authentic than during a time of testing. Ease and success create comfortable masks. Difficulty removes them. A man may appear noble when circumstances favor him, because it costs him nothing to present dignity as an accessory. But take away what he values, challenge his pride, or place him in confinement of disappointment. Then the basic forces of his nature rise to the surface. Some individuals, in such moments, display a resilience they never claimed to possess, a steady courage that even surprises them. Others, who once seemed calm and generous, become bitter and harsh when life refuses them what they expect. Under suffering, the soul returns to its foundation. It becomes stripped down, like a tree in winter without its leaves. What remains is reality. Why focus on these two signs? Because they reach the central axis of human nature, power and suffering. The way a man treats the powerless reveals the condition of his own power, whether it is used to serve or to consume. The way he withstands hardship reveals the structure of his inner world, whether it collapses under pressure or remains steady. Power and pain are the two refining forces through which character is both formed and revealed. Do not focus on the moments when life flatters a man, because in those times he is simply performing. Instead, look at the edges of existence, at the person he could dismiss without consequence, and at the difficult hour when circumstance removes his illusions. These are the spaces where truth is found. Here lies the tragedy. Most men never examine themselves under such conditions. They assume they are virtuous because they have never faced real temptation. They consider themselves strong because they have never been truly tested. It is easy to hold a positive image of oneself in a life that demands nothing exceptional. Society shields us from extremes, the very conditions that would reveal our essence. It surrounds us with comfort and layers of security, allowing us to live and die without ever confronting who we truly are. Yet life, in its harsh fairness, sometimes removes that protection. When it does, many are shocked by what they find beneath. They believe themselves honorable, yet their shadow had been present all along, waiting for the right moment. Think about what this means for those who seek truth, not only about others, but about themselves. If you wish to understand your own character, do not wait for public judgment or the verdict of history. Conduct within yourself the trials that life will eventually bring. Ask, how do I treat the person who cannot benefit me? Do I speak to him with the same respect I expect for myself? Or do I quietly reduce him to his usefulness or inconvenience? Then ask another question. How do I endure suffering? Do I blame fate, turn against those close to me, and allow bitterness to grow? Or do I accept pain as part of existence and remain committed to meaning beyond it? These questions are not decorative thoughts for idle reflection. They are sharp instruments that reveal the soul. I have said before that a man's greatest responsibility is individuation, the process of becoming who he truly is. But individuation does not come from imagining lofty ideals alone. It is through wrestling with realities that remove our pretenses that true growth begins. These realities often appear as two demanding teachers, the weak and the wound. The weak reveal whether our strength is oppressive or compassionate. The wound reveals whether our heart seeks meaning or merely possession. Those who reject the weak or resent their own suffering fail to learn life's lessons. They remain immature, hiding behind roles and unwilling to confront their true nature. Yet there's a paradox here. Anyone who evaluates others by these standards must first accept being evaluated by them. The temptation is strong to become morally self-righteous, congratulating ourselves that we're not like those who mistreat the vulnerable or collapse under hardship. But the shadow often hides within moral superiority. So we must resist looking outward too quickly. Instead, we turn inward and ask whether we can face our unfiltered self. Are we willing to examine how we treat those who offer us nothing? Can we honestly recall how we responded when grief or failure disrupted our lives? If we reflect truthfully, such memories will humble us. And humility is the beginning of wisdom, because it recognizes that both light and darkness exist within us. I have observed the decline of powerful men, individuals whose names once echoed across the world, and the same pattern appears. They were not ultimately undone by rivals, but by their own unmanaged shadows. They gained control over territories, yet failed to master themselves. They acted harshly toward the vulnerable, because it reminded them of weaknesses they refused to accept within. They reacted with anger in times of suffering, because hardship exposed the emptiness beneath their achievements. Be cautious of those who cannot handle authority without arrogance or endure pain without losing hope, because they will harm those who depend on them. And above all, guard against becoming such a person yourself. Some may object, saying, surely a man is too complex to be measured by just two signs. And I agree. The soul is a vast abyss, its depths unreachable by any simple measure. Yet within this expanse, certain currents run deep and true. Power and suffering are among these currents. They touch the roots of our instincts, the drive to rise, and the voice of our vulnerability. If these roots are corrupted, no outward display of virtue will be genuine. But if they are strong, even life's harshest storms cannot uproot them. You might ask why so few pay attention to these truths. It is because observing them demands patience, and interpreting them requires courage. It is far easier to judge a man by his words, wealth, or charm, qualities that glimmer on the surface like sunlit coins, but to notice how he treats those in service, and to wait for life's blows to see what emerges from his wounds. This requires time, and time is scarce in a restless world. Yet truth is never discovered in haste. It resides with those who linger, who observe deeply, and who dare to see without illusion. If I could offer a single piece of advice to those seeking wisdom about human nature, it would be this. Distrust appearances and pay attention to the margins. For in the margins, the overlooked, the lowly, in the hours of suffering, the soul unveils itself, not in the throne room, but in the prison, not in moments of triumph, but in tears. To discern a person's true character, you need not read every page of their biography or tally the praise of their admirers. Stand beside them when the world offers nothing, and when fate has stripped everything away. In that quiet theater, the real self will emerge, and you will see whether it is noble or flawed. Yet this understanding is not meant for condemnation, but for insight. When we witness the vulnerability of another in these trials, we are observing a condition common to all humanity. We too are made of fragile clay, and we too carry a shadow waiting for its moment. Recognizing this is not cause for despair, but an invitation to greater compassion, awareness, and humanity. Only one who has seen darkness can truly appreciate the light. Thus, when we trace the hidden lines of character to these two measures, the way a person wields power over the powerless and the way they endure suffering, we arrive at a deeper understanding than social judgment or moral convenience allows. We are glimpsing the architecture of the soul itself, a vast and intricate system made not of flesh, but forces, symbols, and hidden truths. Power and pain are not random features of life. They are archetypal realities. They act as hammer and anvil, shaping the self through fate's blows. Those who avoid these blows or meet them with cowardice or cruelty fail to become themselves. Instead, they become a hollow imitation, a mask without depth, a persona that decays from within. To grasp why these two forces are decisive, consider what they awaken in the depths of the psyche. Power stirs the ancient god within us, the will to dominate, the shadow of the tyrant, the echo of eras when survival demanded the submission of others. These instincts still lie beneath the fragile surface of civilization, coiled like a serpent. Give a man power, and you will see whether he has learned to charm the serpent or whether he becomes his victim. This is why so many myths tell of heroes who must slay the dragon before claiming the treasure. The dragon represents the drive to dominate, the urge to control and consume. When a man holds authority, when he commands respect or obedience, he is granted the dragon's breath. If he wields it for vanity or takes pleasure in humiliating the weak, he has fallen under the sway of his own shadow. But if he carries power as a responsibility, using it to protect and serve, he has mastered the most dangerous part of himself. That victory is quiet, subtle, like the stillness after a storm. Yet it is the greatest victory a man can achieve. And pain is the other initiator, the dark teacher who comes uninvited. No one seeks it. All try to escape it. Yet it is the sternest guide of the soul. Pain strips us bare, tearing from our hands the toys and talismans we trusted. It forces us to confront the ultimate question. What remains when everything else is lost? Many imagine themselves virtuous until they encounter suffering. Then they curse the heavens and reach for revenge. In pain, the mask of piety falls away, the illusion of control disappears, and the true orientation of the soul is revealed. If a person's focus is only on life's pleasures, then when those pleasures fade, the soul collapses into despair. But if one seeks meaning, something enduring beyond mortality, then suffering becomes not destruction, but initiation. The wound transforms into a womb from which the deeper self emerges. This is the secret of the cross, the hidden lesson in myths of descent. Whether Orpheus in the underworld or Nana stripped in the halls of death, one must pass through the valley of loss to discover the eternal treasure within. Do you see now why these two tests reveal the whole person? They do so because they draw out the extremes of the psyche, the impulse to ascend and compulsion to endure. Power is the summit. Pain is the abyss. At the summit, the air is thin and pride whispers that you are a god. In the abyss, darkness presses in and despair whispers that you are nothing. Between these two lies a narrow path of individuation. Few maintain their footing. Most stumble into arrogance at the top or collapse into bitterness below. Only those who face both extremes without losing themselves, standing in the light without becoming blind, and sitting in the dark without going mad, can be called whole. What does this mean for the world we inhabit? Character cannot be manufactured through education or refined through etiquette. It must be forged in the fires of reality. We raise generations to chase success, fear failure, and hide weakness, and then wonder why their souls are shallow and their hearts brittle. We do not teach them how to bear power without pride or suffering without despair. We do not show them that life tests them not through cleverness or charm, but through their truth in these two crucibles. When the trial comes, many shatter like clay pots in the furnace. Yet there is hope. The psyche is not a rigid machine, but a living organism capable of growth and transformation. The seed of greatness exists in every person, but it must be nurtured with humility and courage. Humility to recognize that power is alone, not ownership, and that every being, however small, carries a spark of the divine. Courage to endure the nights of the soul without surrendering to nihilism, holding the thread of meaning even when the tapestry of life appears torn. These virtues are not taught through words alone. They are learned through life itself, in the slow work of self-mastery, in patient engagement with one's own shadow. The shadow resides in both realms, in the intoxication of power and the despair of suffering. In power, it whispers, "You are the master. You owe nothing to the weak. Crush them, and you will be free." In pain, it hisses, "You are abandoned. Nothing matters. Curse and destroy, for the world has wronged you." Resisting these voices is no small task. It requires knowing the shadow, acknowledging its presence, and learning its language. The shadow is not a demon to be destroyed, but a part of the self to be integrated. Those who deny it will act it out in secret. Those who befriend it can transform its energy into strength. When dominance excites you, say to your shadow, "I know you, and I will not be your servant." When despair chills you, say, "I know you, and I will not be your tomb." In this way, opposites are reconciled and the true self emerges. Not the fragile ego clinging to illusions, but a deep center that balances light and darkness. You might ask, is this not impossible? Who can master both pride and despair? And the answer is, no one masters them fully. Human beings are finite and fallible, yet striving for this integration makes one more truly human than ignoring it. The aim is not perfection, but wholeness. Wholeness arises from the interplay of opposites, not their elimination. The man who understands his capacity for cruelty treats the weak with reverence. The man who has walked through his own darkness brings light to those wandering in the shadows. Such a man is rare. When he appears, he is like a tree with roots deep enough to endure the storm, a center of stability in a chaotic world, a living symbol of the self-realized. And so we return to our starting point. To discern someone's true character, attend to two things. But do not wield this as a weapon to judge others from the safety of your chair. Let it serve first as a mirror in which we dare to look. For the most difficult knowledge to bear is not the truth about others, but the truth about ourselves. And if, in that mirror, we glimpse pride in the presence of the lowly or bitterness in the face of suffering, let us not despair. Let it instead serve as a summons, a call to the inner work that alone can make us whole. Life is not a court of judgment, but a school of transformation, and every failure becomes a teacher if we have the courage to learn. Do not imagine this work is easy. It is the most demanding labor of all, requiring that we descend into the depths where illusions die. It asks that we let go of the childish dream of being purely good and admit that we are also capable of wrongdoing. It asks that we embrace suffering, not as a curse, but as a sacrament, a passage to a larger, richer life. For those who accept this work, the reward is immeasurable. The birth of true self, the awakening of an inner center that is not tossed by the winds of fate, but stands firm, like a mountain in a storm. Then, whether you hold power or are stripped of all, whether you dwell in sunlight or walk through shadows, you remain yourself, authentic, whole, and free. The goal of life is not to appear virtuous, but to become real. Reality is not born in comfort, but in conflict, not in applause, but in silence, not in the glare of admiration, but in the private struggle with power and pain. So let us move through life without fear of these two forces, welcoming them as the stern but faithful teachers they are. For through them, and only through them, the soul learns to speak its true language, and the self emerges from the chrysalis of illusion into the freedom of truth. And when that day arrives, we will understand the meaning of those ancient words. He who conquers himself is greater than he who conquers the world.